contrary, it's always been an immigrant centre, hasn't it? It's close to the docks. People came off here when they were persecuted in Europe. This is what happened.
Yes.
And that's why probably a lot of the wealth is here, because they work hard, the indigenous people, to set up their own businesses. That's always been a centre of the East End. Very good for us up to a point. But now they're cutting one another's throats.
This has been a battleground of against the Jews and against the coloured people. Oh yeah, definitely.
Excuse me, which one is Brick Lane?
This is Brick Lane. This is E1, the other end's E2.
Spitalfields is on the eastern edge of the City of London, and also quite close to the River Thames and the London docks. By the end of the 15th century, foreign merchants were already settling here, attracted by the wealth of London, because they weren't allowed to work within the walls of the city itself. A particularly important group were the Huguenots, who were French Protestants and were craftsmen, and their outstanding craft was silk weaving. The persecution of Protestants became very severe, and they fled here in huge numbers, so that I think by about 1700 there were something like 15,000 Huguenots living in Spitalfields alone. The Irish came in very large numbers as a result of the Irish potato famine in the 1840s. And there are endless reports of dreadful overcrowding of poor Irish people in this area in the 1850s. The Jews came in even larger numbers from about 1880 to about 1907, and that was almost entirely due to persecution in Russia, Poland and other parts of Eastern Europe. The last wave of Jewish immigration was just before the Second World War, and was obviously the result of the Nazi persecution. Since then there's been no more Jewish immigration. Now there are really only elderly Jews left in the area. Quite a large wave of Bengali men came here from the mid-50s to the mid-60s. They came from the very poor part of Bangladesh, as it's now called, Sylhet, rural area. Many of them were illiterate, or were illiterate when they came, and they came here almost entirely for economic reasons. They were living in an overcrowded, poor country, and England was a place they knew of because many of them had worked as seamen. Many have brought wives and families, and so the Bengali community has grown and become, I suppose, now the dominant community in this area.
Come 1963, and I come from the Sylhet part of Bangladesh, and I'm coming from earning the money because my country is a very poor country.
Why did you come to this area?
Because particularly this area is our people, is a lot of people in here, and I get the suitable job in here.
Where is your home now?
My home is the Great Britain now, England.
You have a British passport?
I have got the British passport.
And your children?
Children also, children born in this country.
Well, some of them, they thought that they had a genuine right to come to this country, and again by mistake they thought that they will have a big welcome when they will be here. From experience they have learned that it is not the case. Rather, from experience they learned that they are the most unwelcome people, because simply their color of their skin is not the right one. They are black people.
When you are up to your eyebrows, very few people are prepared to accept that it's their own fault. And as a result of which they look round for a scapegoat, and the establishment or society as such usually manages to find one. And now, because the Jews have integrated to a certain extent and are white not so easy to pick out. They have another minority to pick on who is so obvious by their colour that they can't escape by integration.
In the 1930s, Jews were victimised and attacked in the East End of London. In the late 1970s, it was the Bengali community who became the target for racial attack.
So now is our people, when it's dark, they're scared to come out on the street.
What happened to you?
Well, I was been to Hackney, it's my friend party. I was come back to home, I wanted to come back home, and this time there was attacked me about 25 people. I was only 6 members. There was attacked with.
There were 6 of you and
Yeah.
25 people attacked you.
Yeah. So they starting fight by bottle and stone. They get everything. We don't have anything,
My brother, sister, father and mother, they literally, they want to play sometime, going outside. Well, some English kid coming to hate them, So they're coming back to house and crying, this and that,
There aren't many Bengali families living on the newer and predominantly white estates outside Spitalfields, like this one in nearby Poplar. Those that do live there are an easy target for racist attacks.
I don't see that. Anyways, young staff, no, not more less than 16, 14 years old, but these are white.
Why do they pick on you?
Because I'm Asian this way. At night about 10:30, we are sit down here and they throw the big stone, that one, and when it's come in through the windows and it's nearly hit my son. Same time, just 15 minutes before, they throw the big stone. My 1-year-old boy wasn't asleep on the bed, and some glass go over his head, but it didn't hurt. I reported the police. Policeman comes with me, and they just write down my statement. Yes, sir. We are feeling very, very bad. We want to move from here because my children is too much fried at night. We want immediately move from this house.
In Spitalfields itself, the buildings may be old, but they are safe. Over 60% of the residents of Spitalfields are Bengali, often forced to live in the worst accommodation, considered uninhabitable by their white neighbours.
The white people that are left are all the old Jewish people and a few odd white families that haven't moved out. But as the flats go empty, it tends to be all Bengali families moving in now, no white families moving in at all.
Why?
I think because it's an old block, they're classed as, second-hand dwellings or whatever. And I think because they're old, white families don't want to move in them anyhow. But with the troubles the Bengalis are having, they'd live anywhere. So they don't mind taking an old flat because they feel safe in this area. But it has caused resentment to certain people. The Bengalis seem to still be coming, and it does upset some people, but then I don't really think that they understand the reason they're still coming. I think that's what it boils down to. They don't really understand, they don't want to understand.
If you picked up one of the local papers, not so bad now, but 2 or 3 years ago, you'd find 2/3 of the letter pages consisting of diatribes against the immigrants. If you look at the files of the East London Advertiser in the years of the first decade of this century, the same letters are there. You only have to change the one word. You only have to change Jew to Asian, and the same letters are there, and they say the same things about them. Some of them mutually contradictory things. They used to say of the Jews that they were dirty, which isn't true, any more than it is of Bangladeshis. They used to say in one breath that they herded in overcrowded ghetto slums, and in the other breath that they were pinching all the housing from the British.
There used to be a flat on the end with about 12 men. There wasn't women there at the time. The women were sort of back in Bangladesh. And 12 of them used to go to work, and then another 12 come home and sleep. And you could see through the window the bunk beds where they used to live.
You know, you used to think they stink and all that. But once you get to know them, it's a different thing, like, you know what they're like. But then white people stink, black people stink, everyone's got their own problems, you know what I mean? But really they don't stink as bad as it's said, like, when they're making a meal, but it ain't every day that they make the same meal, you know what I mean?
Some curries are different to others. Some got that right pongy smell.
I think it's the batter they use, isn't it?
And it's like Jews. If you go past some Jewish houses when they're cooking fish on a Thursday for the weekend, a vile smell. It's a certain fish though, only on one certain fish that they cook, and it's very, very bad smell. But it can't be helped. You do intend to get a terrible smell off of our cabbage when it's cooking.
Yeah.
And yeah, I love cabbage. I love any green stuff. And but still, when it's cooking, I've felt horrible. Well, we've got one man round here. He forbids his wife to clean the stairs. They're filthy. But you can, and she can walk up and down them. You know when they buy a bit of curtain to go in the flat? Well, they buy one bit, either it goes right across, and that stays like that there for ages. Or else they get two, but they knot them and tie them up. You know, they never make them look nice. It's sort of they don't understand, because they never had curtains and things, you know what I mean? And I think if they're shown, because I've been in a few, that asked us, how do you get this and where do you get it? And you go in their homes, they're better than ours.
But nobody want to stay nobody want to living in a slum place, Bengali or English or Asian. Nobody want to live this kind of place.
If you look round now, it is Bengalis that live here. Their houses, if you go inside, you know, you can eat off their floor, you know, I know that. But the outside, they don't live on the outside, you know, and they don't understand they should keep the appearance of the place looking nice, because it makes the place last longer, you know, and look nice when people walk through or whatever. Majority of the people living in these flats are not legal tenants anyhow, they're squatters. And the reason for that is because they've been harassed out of their own flats, you know, petrol, rags and God knows what, bricks thrown through their windows. So they come here for refuge.
Many of the older tenement blocks await demolition or repair. Bengali families followed the example of white squatters and occupy some of these premises as a solution to their homelessness.
I am waiting for last 5 years for Tower Hamlet. In Tower Hamlet councils, they didn't give me any flat. So what I have to do? I get only one room. We are living 7 people, 7 members of us. No bath, no proper toilets, and I couldn't get any other flat. I can't buy any flat myself because no house for selling in this area. So where I have to be live? We have to be squatting, or we can't stay on the street with a little kid. And we are, so therefore Bengali people have to do these things.
Why he wants to stay here? Because he works here, His kids can go to the school which is in Spitalfields. He feels he is safe. He does not want to move.
We are very bad situation. Council does not take care of it. No caretaker in the house. If we complain it, council doesn't come.
The Bengali tenants find themselves neglected by the housing authorities, who will neither rehouse them nor maintain the present buildings.
It's not because those estates happen to be occupied by Asians. I think they're occupied in the main by people that weren't always proper tenants at the beginning. They're estates which in any case have been run down, and they're estates where the authorities haven't yet programmed them into a proper repair programme.
A repair programme isn't possible while the buildings are occupied, and there aren't enough vacant flats on the newer estates to rehouse the occupants.
We haven't got enough housing for people. We don't detest the Asians, we don't detest everybody. We're trying to live in a multiracial society, and I would like to see a multiracial society work in this area. But it has been the policy of the authorities to knock down, not to rebuild. Knock down, knock down, knock down.
You go to any block of flats where you'll find one or two Asian families. You go back within a year, the white families have either been given exchange or moved out, and you'll find within a year the majority of families in that particular block, wherever it may be, end up being Asians. And where do the local authorities put a lot of these people? They only put them in a lot of flats that we or white people wouldn't accept.
The Greater London Council, under pressure to rehouse the Bengalis, published a document which became known as the Ghetto Plan. The Greater London Council is to earmark certain blocks of flats in or near Spitalfields in Tower Hamlets for the exclusive use of Bengali immigrants. Existing tenants who wish to move away will, where possible, be given transfers.
I think the first we heard of it, or read about it, was in the Observer, and everybody was up in arms, especially the white tenants on this estate, you know, not only on the old one, but they read it as though they're going to be pushed out, you know, even on the new estate, and Bengalis are going to take over. So quite a lot of them, you know, were against the Bengalis at that time, you know, thinking, oh, they've come and they're going to take all our houses, but that wasn't it, you know. And the Bengalis were up in arms as well, because they didn't want to live in blocks separate, you know, and what the local community wanted was a multiracial community.
The Chicksand estate is the largest estate in Spitalfields, and that's where alarm was most deeply felt. The older blocks were inhabited mainly by Bengalis. The newer blocks had predominantly white tenants. The white residents assumed that the Bengali families were going to be given preference on the housing waiting lists, and others would have to wait even longer for rehousing.
People who lived in old flats that had no bathroom. You had to have a bath in the kitchen, and they've lived like that for 46 years. Would that cause problems? Why was these people put before them?
Because everyone on the Chicksand new estate that's gone empty, it's an Asian family that's got it. Everyone.
They should have to wait until people like Charlotte gets a place. She was born here, she was brought up here, and she's entitled to a place.
And I think the local authorities was partly to blame for that. They knew what was coming. We've been to a lot of meetings, and we'd asked a lot of questions, and we got no answers.
What the GLC were trying to do at the time was to respond to what they thought was what the Asians wanted, and that was to be rehoused together in what the Asians were calling safe areas. Regrettably, I think the GLC handled this rather badly. They didn't explain what it was they were trying to do, and people assumed that what they were trying to do was to have named estates, almost bricking people into those estates and not allowing free movement into any other part of the borough. I think the GLC, once they realised their mistake, withdrew the proposals in that particular form, and have tried to be more sensitive to the rehousing policies since that time.
Well, I'm glad the ghetto plan come anyhow, because it brought us all together. You know, brought the Asian community together, and it brought the Asian and the white community together. 4 groups called a big public meeting, and we had to lock off where we were because the hundreds of people that turned up for that meeting, and it was strongly said that we don't want to live separated, we want to be a multiracial community. I think that's the reason we haven't got ghettos today. You know, otherwise I reckon there would have been a ghetto, because even now, you know, I still claim that they're only moving Asians into these old, you know, shit houses. Like, why don't they offer them where I am? You know, we've got a few, you know, but you guarantee your life. The families that are moving in on the old Chicksand estate are Asian families, you know, they're just given the old rubbish, like.
As we said before, they didn't know what it was like and they needed showing, so that is a poor excuse to say like they're dirty and all that. But really, when you get down to it, I've never had no bother with them, and I've lived amongst them a lot. All nationalities, you name it, I've lived there, Arabs, everything, and I've never had no bother with any. Once it's like anybody else, 2 white people going together. You don't know what they're like. You might come from Scotland, I've come from somewhere else, but we've got put together. Then we don't talk, we don't know one another. Then I don't know, something just comes out, and then you get to know, you go in there, have a cup of tea, you've been neighbours for years now. You're old friends, but you wasn't at 30, you was frightened to look at her. Well, this is just how they are. Exactly the same thing.
I didn't used to go out beating them up on nothing, but I never used to like packies. I used to call a packy a packy. But now I know like a load of Bengalis and I call them by name. And they're my friends now, yeah. You can't go on fighting people like that anyway. I mean, you can't be against someone all your life.
Exactly a week after the ghetto plan had filled the nation's newspapers and the Bengalis had become the focus of attention, they were the targets of a large and organised racial attack which swept down Brick Lane.
And it's not even National Front that live locally in Bethnal Green, Shoreditch or anywhere. It's men, when you read them in the paper when they've been caught, from out of bounds. I mean, then that Sunday that ran, it was all young boys, about 20 of them come smashing up the Indians and Pakistanis and I don't know what Bengalis, just because they were that.
They're told like what Pakis do and what they're doing and all things like that, so they think, well, we ain't gonna let them do nothing like that, you know, whatever they're told, and then they think the only way they can do it is by beating them up and that, mugging them. It must be someone like who they listen to, you know what I mean, like a club manager or something.
They belong to certain political groups and they all banded themselves down into Tower Hamlets, and it caused the police to send more force down here, not only for the Asians but for white people who was non-political as well.
The Bengalis demanded police protection from racist attacks, but neither they nor their white neighbours wanted to live in a police state.
When these attacks started first, the Asians demanded police protection. And truly, they were entitled to police protection, but when the police authorities flooded the area with the police, Asians didn't seem to want it. We, as the white community, we objected to the number of police in the area on a Sunday morning or during the week. They didn't seem to want to patrol the area that the trouble was in. It was on the outlying areas that the police patrolled.
400-500 National Front supporters comes in every Sunday morning in Brick Lane, and about 500 of the police guard them up, like they guard the most notorious criminals in the prison. Those hundreds of national supporters, they always say things which is against the immigrants and against the Bengali community in Tower Hamlet.
I have no doubt at all that there are some racialists amongst the police in this area. I met one outside this very building a few weeks ago, who manifestly was a racialist. But I think the antipathy of the Bengalis towards the police is not as well funded as they think it is. What was wrong with our police force here until 6 months ago is that there weren't enough of them. And I regret to say it had to take a riot before they took any notice of what I'd been saying.
Now, Indian subcontinent, it was a British colony for a long time, so therefore the whole police system was there in order to serve the interest of the British colonialists. And that is why it was an alien body, nothing to do with at all with Indian committee or Bengali committee. So therefore Bengali community looks at the police force from traditional point of view with suspicion as an agent of the government, a foreign government, and it is there to exploit.
The police force in this area, they have never protected Bengali people, and there are evidences available, right? Whereas in my own experience interpreting with the law center when they are investigating the racist attacks on the Bengali people in the housing estates, whereas the windows has been smashed down, the kids has been beaten up, and then after that the police were called. They arrived at least an hour or two later, and the following day there was the same kind of attack. The police were called, and then the police advised the people, the tenants there, it's one family, that you have to look after yourself.
They don't see, I don't think the police see the National Front as the major source of the problem. They see the immigrants themselves as being the bother. Well, there are so many of them here. The area's got people who've come from various parts of the world. And as such, their customs, their attitudes, their behavior are quite different from the indigenous people. And the police must be able to respond to these sort of special circumstances.
It is not only the police force to be blamed, it is a part of the institutionalized racialist bureaucracy which says that carry on exploiting people, carry on not defending them, do whatever you like with them.
The Bengalis feel that insensitive policing and inefficient housing policies have helped many of the problems caused by racist intolerance and by the attacks. The authorities seem to be doing very little to help them.
Local housing department, there are no any Bengali person working for the housing department. I just wanted to contact any Bengali person who working for council. I don't know what we want and what our problems, because some people can't speak English and they can explain their problem to them, and the situation is like that.
I think what we're really suffering from is that we're dealing with the first generation of immigrants in this particular case, and that they haven't yet been able to work their way through the normal process, which takes a generation in order that they do begin to fill up the positions. But certainly in appointing people on merit, people with special knowledge and qualifications, whether it be a local knowledge or of a particular group of people, ought in certain cases to be given maybe preferential treatment. And I'd hope in time at the next elections there will, as a matter of course, be Bengali representatives within the borough. Not just because they're Bengali, but because they're aware of the problems and they're aware of the problems in their particular area.
But the younger generation have little faith in politicians.
I mean, like, you have racialism from all angles, you see. There are silent prejudice which exist. It's like, it's not only the National Front that we've got to fight. We've got to fight the, the state government with, the racist parties and the racist people who exist. They're also racist. I mean, the police, for example, or the Home Secretary. He doesn't come out on TV or in a press and doesn't say that racialism should not exist. So it's like, they play a major role as well. The Tories and, the Liberal and the Labour. I mean, they're the established parties. They're the person who are not saying anything. They're not taking this issue really seriously. I mean, we had 4 murders, and I think it's about time they should do something about it.